Good afternoon and good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and dear audience. Please, we welcome on behalf of Conflict and Resilience Research Institute Canada and Rotary Peace Building Club of Winnipeg. And this event is particularly organized as the second screening of the film Exiled, which was actually aired on 18th of September. And because of request from wider audience, we have arranged and requested the director to kindly allow us to have the second session. And we are very proud to present Shahida Tulaganova, the director of the film and the film itself today. So without further ado, let me jump into the session by saying that, dear audience, you are aware of the Rohingya crisis and its ramifications over the past 3 years over now. And we are sitting at this particular period of history when we see at the one hand, 1.3 million Rohingyas are stuck in Bangladesh and around 600,000 within Myanmar, and another 1 million, nearly half a million of them in 8 countries. And there is hardly any hope for the repatriation plan of Rohingyas at all back to their homeland. And at this particular period, we also see the case is being dealt in the International Court of Justice, and the court already issued an interim directive to stop any actions committed towards genocide. But interesting development happening which happened last week, I believe, in Bangladesh-Myanmar border. So Myanmar deployed around 100,000 military in the border, and we are still evaluating the situation, whether it's a provocation to engage Bangladesh in armed conflict, or it is going to tackle the internal security situation in the Rakhine state. So this is a developing situation happening for last couple of days, and we are watching closely what it is going to have an impact in the overall repatriation process. So within this whole scenario, today's film is being screened again, and thank you very much for your interest. And I will now hand over the floor to the director Shahida Tulaganova, who happened to be in Berlin, and as she informed us, and the film was also screened there. So, ladies and gentlemen, here is Shahida Tulaganova, and she's going to speak about her, latest experiences, and of course, her motivation for the film. Shahida, floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. And thank you for the interest. And it's amazing that it's the second time the film is being screened in Canada. And I'm very happy because the more people view it and watch it, the more broad they broaden their horizons. And for example, I just the film was screened in Berlin Human Rights Film Festival, and it was the first time it was in a real cinema and with a real audience. And I was worried that because the film is 75 minutes long, and I was worried that, people will not watch it. People will get out of the, movie cinema. And I was really agitated. But what happened 75 minutes later, and I was sitting in a foyer of the hall, the door were open and nobody was getting out. And I was like dreading. And then somebody told me, no, don't worry. It's a good sign. And people were still like sitting totally taken over by what the story they saw. And I was extremely pleased. And then there was another hour of Q&A of people, normal people, like young audience in Germany who were really interested in what's going on. So I'm glad that at least on level by level, we are trying to raise awareness for people to deeply understand the film. The film takes us back to the beginning of Burma. And it was very important to me because to Western audiences, a lot of people don't know what Burma is about. It's not that country which comes up in the news a lot. The only thing the average person knows about Burma is that there is Aung San Suu Kyi, a democracy model and an icon, and that's pretty much it. So it was important first to explain that Burma is just so different country with so many different ethnic groups, and then take us back to the very violent and actually history of this country. It is really a country with violent history. If you excuse me for just a second, I know it's extremely unprofessional, but I have two kids who are screaming, even though they were asked not to. So I do apologize.
Dear audience, in the meantime, Shahida comes back to the session. Let me add the story of Burma. And she was very right in saying that British colonial Burma is not the Burma or Myanmar as we
I'm sorry,
find
I'm
now.
back.
So once again, absolutely. Once again, to the director,
Thanks.
please.
So I do apologize. So that's why to understand the Rohingya problem, you need to understand what Burma was, and now. And therefore, you have to then go back to 1978 when the first exodus of Rohingya happened. And everyone kind of forgot about it, that 2017 was just the final stage of what happened back in 1978, when about 200,000 Rohingyas were forced out of Burma to Bangladesh. And people don't realize that the Cox's Bazar camp actually started in 1978. And what, 40, 50 years later, it's still there, but it became bigger. And there are more people there. So there was no solution, never a process or a roadmap to resolve the Rohingya issue. And things got worse. So that's what we're trying to portray in the film. There's another important thing why I started to do it. It's the Rohingya case is a case of genocide. And it's absolutely clear. And I know the lawyers are going to be debating about this International Court of Justice, International Criminal Court, but I studied international law too, even though I'm not a lawyer. And it is a clear case of genocide. It's a classic case of genocide. It's actually a direct repetition of what Nazi Germany did to the Jews back in 1933, the process against the Jews, the Holocaust. Started in 1933, which exactly the same process of first taking their documents away, stripping them of nationality, then confining them into ghettos, then confiscating their properties, and finally they ended up in Auschwitz in gas chambers. So when I was working on the Rohingya case, I was always thinking that unlike Nazi, unlike Hitler, who had really short time to resolve the Jewish issue, because by 1943 he understood he's losing the war. So clock was ticking. And for him, the Jewish issue was far more important than the whole war. So that's why the Auschwitz was constructed. That's why the gas chambers were invented, just to speed up the killing of the Jews. In the case of Burma, the military has all the time in their life. They don't need to construct gas chambers because they can take their time. Kick out the Rohingya in 1978, in 1992, in between 2012 and 17, for God's sake, as Burmese general, the military chief said, the final solution. And the mere fact that he used the exact word which in Nazi Germany used the Jewish issue, the final solution, is extremely alarming. So that's I always say, Rohingyas, unfortunately, they're probably the only ethnic minority in the world which goes through a genocide for so many years. Because all other cases of genocide, like in Rwanda, in Bosnia, were happening like this in a very short span of time. In the case of Rohingya, it happens throughout decades, and that's why people are getting confused. So, and also there was another thing. So I wanted people to watch, even the lawyers, to understand that this is not like hiki haka issue or sporadic violence of the military. It is a coherent state organized strategy of extermination of a particular group of people. Therefore, it is a genocide. And of course, Burma should be punished for this. And also I just want to take this opportunity and say how I am absolutely astounded by the response of the Bangladeshi government for hosting so many people. Imagine like in a matter of a month and a half, the flood of over 700,000 people crossing your border. So your choice is that either to let them die and drown, like many other countries in Southeast Asia doing, like Malaysia, Indonesia, and stuff like that, or you open up the borders and bring these people in, totally lose your forests and a nice beach side in Cox's Bazar, totally change the environmental system and ecosystem in the area, build the camp which will accommodate so many people, make sure there is order and there is no violence inside. And I thought that Bangladesh did amazing job. And I am very upset that it's this achievement and contribution was never properly recognized by the international community. People take it for granted. However, when refugees are coming, there's a question in Europe, oh, you know, there's a quota for refugees. For example, how many Syrians are going to get? 20, 30, 500? Oh my God, it's just all sorts of debate in the press and the demonstrations against, and the national governments, especially in Eastern Europe, are totally against this. And here we go. One of the poorest countries in the world, one of the most densely populated countries in the world, opens a door to 700,000 people. And this is absolutely unbelievable. So I always say I take my hat off the government of Bangladesh for still doing this amazing job.
So no, thank you so much, Shahida. It's always fascinating to listen to your very passionate perspective on this film. And dear audience, she shared with us, I would say, very interesting three aspects as she directed and produced the film. One is the similarity of the case between Nazi Germany in the period of Second World War, and in between, and the cases of Myanmar, and where she, I would say, very rightly mentioned that they had less time, and that is why the Nazi Germany organized mass-scale extermination of Jews. But here we see it's a prolonged period of time. If we even start from 1962, when the military took over power in Burma, and think about after 1962, we are talking about 2017. How many years passed, and how many, that what she commented, that they had all the time in their hands to do this. And this is somehow is actually creating an issue in the western part of the world, because we think about, I mean, when the reason I'm saying, because my country Canada went outright and acknowledged it as genocide, but many of the countries, including UK, including USA, and many of the European nations have not yet acknowledged it as genocide. And I don't know. I mean, I was following some of the news in the Twitter that the Americans are, pushing hard. There are many, so they're convincing their, politicians to acknowledge. So this is one of the reasons that Shahida brought up today, that why there is an ambivalence of mere acknowledging it as genocide. So there is a politics of, genocide, as you all know. She also mentioned, and this is really I wanted to a little bit of expand the contribution of Bangladesh as a host country. So, gentlemen and ladies, those who are watching today with us, you are aware that Rohingyas are dispersed at least in 8 countries other than Bangladesh. So far, our data shows, and they're all refugees. They're all stateless in those countries, and their situation is no good than any other countries they live in. But what actually happened with Bangladesh as she rightly mentioned, since 1978, Rohingyas started coming, and there are refugee camps established in 1978. And it's a matter of time that this whole population and the expansion had to be done to accommodate more people. And Bangladesh is a small developing country, as we all testify. But the point is, as Shahida rightly mentioned, that when the last exodus happened within 48 hours, 3 4 days, 700,000 people are fleeing. What Bangladesh could have done? And this is just one of the examples that Bangladesh took the lead, and thought the policymakers, Honorable Prime Minister of Bangladesh, she went and she took the lead and opened the border, despite knowing the risks and vulnerabilities of such a decision. And we are talking about after 3 years plus, and there is no development in terms of repatriation, and the camp population grew over these 3 years, and there are enormous burden in terms of meeting the basic needs of 1.3 million people in a particular area. So international communities, the way we frame international communities and others, they are yet to acknowledge the problems that Bangladesh is facing and Bangladesh is going to face in the future. And very latest development happening from Bangladesh and through other communities is that Bangladesh is pressing now for a safe zone. And from our institute, when we published our research work in a book which came out in January this year, we specifically mentioned that in order to pressure Myanmar, the concept of safe zone under the umbrella of responsibility to protect is possibly the only way now available to us. Because other than this, Myanmar won't buzz, and they won't ever be able to agree to take back a single Rohingya to their own places. Well, there is a confusion, and again, I'm referring to a very latest development in UN General Assembly. If some of you were watching, so Myanmar, when asked by the, as you know, the General Assembly session is on. So when it was time for Myanmar as a country to talk about this crisis, Myanmar outrightly and blatantly put the blame on Bangladesh about the repatriation process, and why the process stalled. And in reply, Bangladesh representative very clearly said, and of course laid out the logics that it is nothing about Bangladesh. Myanmar systematically destroyed the villages where from the Rohingyas came. There are many satellite imageries, and dear audience, these are authentic satellite imageries that we researched on before we write our book. And it is clear that these villages are demolished. There's nothing to go back to. And instead, Myanmar has come out with a plan, like as Shahida rightly mentioned, in the Second World War, Nazi Germany, the camps, barbed wire camps. So Myanmar wishes that Rohingyas should go back to those camps. And this is why not a single Rohingya is motivated to go back voluntarily unless they are pushed hard from Bangladesh government. So there is a whole status quo is going, and our deep gratitude to Shahida for promoting and making people aware of this issue wherever she could go. So, dear audience, please tune in on this conflict. This is one of the most challenging humanitarian aspect, according to our observation in recent time, the most challenging one. And if you even compare number by number, you'll be astonished to notice the amount of people we are talking about, those who have basically no hope for the future. So without going into much discussion here, our today's aim is actually have the second screening of her film. And once again, on behalf of Conflict and Resilience Research Institute Canada and the Peace Days Festival of and Peace 365 event from Rotary Club of Winnipeg Peace Builder Committee, Rotary Club of Winnipeg, District 5550, we deeply appreciate the contribution and support for screening this film. And we have met with the director Shahida, and hopefully in the future we would love to welcome you in Canada for physical screening of the film, Shahida. And dear audience, what we'll do now, we'll beg leave. Shahida needs to leave as well. It is 8 p.m. In the UK, 8:30 actually. And what we'll do is we'll run the film, and once the film is over, our session of today's second screening will as well be over. So till then, stay fine wherever you are and stay well. And please pray for the Rohingyas because they need a lot of our prayers. Thank you. Bye. Bye. Thank you, Shaida.
Deuxième chef ဆိုတာဗုဒ္ဓဝါဒဆိုတာ